One of the best parts of my career has been the opportunity to work with some really remarkable people. And I'm just talking about people who just inspire you with every word that they speak and every idea that they try to bring across. It's been a really fulfilling part of my journey, just being able to connect with these people. And sometimes it's only for a few minutes. Sometimes you're just over coffee at a conference and you just have a moment where you really feel like the person has brought something new to your life, something exciting and something interesting. And then sometimes it's been relationships I've had for years and years and years where I've gotten so much value out of knowing someone and working with them, gotten so much insight into the world around me, into my own experience, and as well as into their experience. These are people that I revere and idolize and kind of hold up on a pedestal, not because I don't know that they're flawed, but because I see them as their best selves in a sort of way. Now, I've also had the unfortunate experience, and I think everybody ends up in this kind of situation, where you have to work with someone who just doesn't quite gel or vibe with what you believe, what you think, how you work. And this can be a really difficult situation because you can end up in a very hostile working environment, you can end up in a very difficult place. Just being able to get up every day and kind of get back into your workflow and into your mindset for work, it can be a really terrible, terrible experience. One of the earliest experiences I had with this was fairly early on in my research career. I was working at an amazing place, but the person that I was working with and I just didn't quite fit. There wasn't a really strong rapport, and I always had the sense that I was doing something wrong or doing something that was out of place, or that I was just not in sync with what they wanted and what they did. And I had a similar experience in my doctoral studies. I had someone I was working with that we just never kind of worked well together, and it deteriorated. Those relationships kind of deteriorated over time, and I won't go so far as to say they were abusive, but there was certainly a lot of tension wrapped up in my relationship with them and how we worked together. And so this can create, like I said, a really hostile and difficult working life. I recently had a kind of similar experience where some colleagues and I who were working together became really passive-aggressive towards each other. And it was really problematic because that sort of tension and that hostility kind of just permeates through the whole team. And even if you're not someone who's directly involved in that conflict, whatever shape that might take, you can still feel that tension. You can still kind of sense that there's something not quite right with the way things are with the way things are going. Now, today I had the first experience of my life where I found out that someone I'm going to be working with has actually been arrested before on a very high crime. And I never really considered this as an issue of kind of character, because with any crime there's always a context and there's always kind of a discussion to have. And I always think about, crime and the aspect of kind of rehabilitation from your crime or the crime that you caused to be kind of an essential part. Like you really, it's not about necessarily punishment so much as it is about rehabilitation and kind of paying your dues to society. And rendering the aggrieved individuals kind of whole, or as whole as possible. Anyways, that's a little bit of a tangent. I don't want to go down that road necessarily. What I want to talk about is kind of the experience from my end was really interesting because I couldn't just make a decision about this individual right off the bat. I couldn't just say, oh, I'm not going to work with them because they did that or because they were arrested for that crime. I really had to think more critically about what sort of benefits are they bringing to the work that we're doing? What would be the negative consequences of involving them in the work that we're doing? And how can we kind of make a judgment call here when a lot of what happened was way beyond what I understand, or what I'm able to understand about the specific context of what their experience was. And so it's troubling because there's not really a right or wrong answer here, and it can be really difficult to suss out what the details are. And I've worked with people who have difficult pasts. Even in one of my first jobs, a lot of the people that I worked with had come from the local prison, so they were there on work release. And these people that I worked with, they were in prison for a variety of reasons, some nonviolent, some very violent. And so I was always kind of accustomed to working with different kinds of people and people with different backgrounds and different characters. But this was the first time in quite a long time that I've had to take that into consideration in the work that I'm doing or the work that I will do. And so understanding the context is really kind of an important part of approaching an individual on their terms, trying to understand where they're coming from, what was there in their past, in their history, and what does that mean for them today. The things of our past, well, if we're held account to them and we understand that there is somehow a amends being made, you have to take into consideration where they've come from in order to really have a good conversation about these issues. And that's not to say that there aren't black and white issues in this area. There's certainly black and white issues, but more than often than not, there are a lot of gray. And it's really difficult to make a clear understanding for what happened and what was and was not okay about what had happened. So I think the second real issue here is just to extend to the person some sense of empathy and understanding. Where are they coming from? What was their experience? What was the context of their experience? To try to understand better how you can make a good judgment call about that work or about that person. And then, of course, when it comes to cooperation and anything that may be voluntary or involuntary in terms of your working life with that person, really take into consideration how you can create clear boundaries. So how you can make sure that the boundaries in your relationship are very well defined and well spelled out. So I think those are the three things I would say in difficult working relationships, whether it's because somebody has a past that you need to take into account in your future working for future collaboration, or whether that's just someone's level of professionalism on the job. You really should take into account their context, so understand where they're coming from, be empathetic, try to understand what their experience is, and then make sure that you have clear boundaries and you have, in your own kind of experience, a clear judgment criteria for how you will assess the situation and how you're going to move forward.